All right, so this one is for Joe Fiore. Asked for a little bit of help with E-flat rhythm changes. But this should be pretty generally useful. Here I have transcribed Sonny Rollins' solo with Bud Powell's Modernists, 1950. Original recording of this tune, Wail. So yeah, I just thought I would analyze some of the figures. I've got some scratch paper if we need to really pull some stuff out. So first chord, it's gonna be E-flat major 7, C minor 7. These are pretty obvious. So this figure is really just E-flat major sound. Not much there. Repeats the same phrase. And then in the 2-5 to the 4, ba 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 de ba 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 do ba do ba do ba do ba ba. So that, if we write out all the notes that are being played, so ba 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 ba. Yeah, I should leave some space. So ba ba da ba be ba 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 ba. Should have left more space. Ba ba da ba ba da ba 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 ba. So there we have E-flat Dorian, right? So, or that's also A-flat Mixolydian. So that's sort of the same idea. He's just playing this little phrase. This phrase is interesting because he doubles that. So kind of a parallelism. He sets up structure and develops it. And then once we get back into the tonic, which is, and these chords are approximations, so don't worry. I did not transcribe Bud Powell's comping, though I probably should have. So ba 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 da ba do ba da bo ba 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 bo ba ba do ba da ba ba. That's a pretty cool line. We'll get to that. So ba 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 da ba do ba. So over the G minor 7, he's kind of thinking, whenever you have a 2-5 like this, or this is a 3-6, but same, relative structure, you can kind of think of the 2 chord as subservient to the 5. So you can call this could be G Phrygian, right? Because that's an A-flat, remember, the key signature. Or you could think of this entire figure as like C7 flat 13, basically. So here, you see on the strong beats, he's outlining. That's, kind of part of the C major. And then in the first 2 beats, if you think of this whole bar as C7, right? He goes ba ba da. Right, so that's literally just like a rootless C7 arpeggio. And this little figure, that's kind of a useful piece of language, or not really a piece of language, that's just an enclosure, right? We're kind of going towards the F minor, and so we're targeting this F note, so we're gonna hit it and go around it. Ba 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 do ba da. Alright. Ba 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 do ba ba do ba do da do ba. I think I went into D flat. I lost my pitch. Anyways, so that's kind of what's going on there. And then here he goes. I need a pitch. Sorry. Okay. Okay. Ba bo ba 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 bo da. So here he kind of, again, he kind of swallows this note. It's not very relevant. So really the arc that we're going through is F, E flat, B, D. Right, so that's going down to the third of the dominant. You could call that the root and the seventh of the 2 chord, but who even cares about the 2 chord? Ba ba da ba bo da ba. So bo ba bo ba do. That's another little melody he's using. Bo ba bo ba do. That's a pretty common melody. Ignore my scratch paper. Bo ba bo da ba do ba 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 da ba. So here again, we've gone to the top of the A section. So he's just playing in E flat major, basically. That's what I would call that. This is another little enclosure figure, like ba ba do ba ba do ba da, because this kind of targets, or sorry, he doesn't get back to the F. So ba ba do ba do ba da ba da. That little figure is itself sort of a piece of language. Ba do ba da da. You'll hear people play that a lot. I'll add little guys there. Makes it nice. And that really just outlines E flat major. Yeah, nothing special going on. That, I mean, who knows where that melody note comes from? I would call that like a E flat minor or like a blues inflection sort of thing. Kind of a callback to what he was doing over the 4 chord in the previous system. Then he hits us with some serious bebop. So this figure, that F sharp, is really just an approach tone. That's a common technique. You might be familiar with the idea of approach tones, but if you're not, basically you can have chord tones. So here, right, this would be like G minor 7, C7, F minor 7, B flat 7. So chord tones here, if we're pretending that the 2 chord doesn't exist, are, or here he's actually playing more in G minor. So the 5 chord almost doesn't exist. Or we'll handle what happens in the second half of the bar later. But here we're just right there. We've got smack dab in the middle, just a full G minor triad, right? And so if we want to add some rhythm, we want that arpeggio to go nice and strong, so we don't really want to start on a weird beat. So we can add texture to the weird beat by giving it just kind of a chromatic approach tone below. So yeah, he outlines G minor 7, and then here, like the chord might be C7, but what he really is outlining, I believe, is G minor 7, F sharp minor 7, and then F minor 7. And that's kind of a nice motion, isn't it? It's just the same chord type going down chromatically. And because we know that we're targeting an F minor 7, this is a good technique. So he's doing 7, 5, and then he hits E natural, C sharp. That's also 7, 5, F minor 7. And then in the new bar, he can do the full F minor 7 arpeggio. So that's what's going on there. You could also say that he's just taking this minor third phrase and he's going down chromatically until it becomes that. Whether this harmony even exists in a real sense is arguable, but that's the way that I see that. There he's adding a kind of an interesting extension to that B flat 7. So he's That's the flat 13 or the sharp 5 is really what I would call it. So I would call this a B flat 9 sharp 5 arpeggio or shape. And that's cool. You know, if you see B flat 9 sharp 5 on a page, usually pianists will play full whole tone voicings, right? So this is borrowed from that whole tone scale. I didn't even write a note head. Remember to write your note heads, kids. Right, that's kind of what this is borrowed from, and that's just a different sound. You know, dominant chords, a big part of adding interest to your solos is how you treat the dominant chord. You know, B flat 7 could mean B flat 13 sharp 11, could mean B flat 9 sharp 5, could mean B flat 7 flat 9, could mean sharp 9 sharp 5. All of these are very different sounds that, you know, are still legitimate interpretations of seeing B flat 7 on a page. So, you know, Sonny Rollins is just giving us his own take right now. Now we have that 2-5 to the 4. And then, you know, people put something there, but we'll figure out what that is. So here he's just running up. Ba, 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 ba. That's just straight up B flat, Dorian, E flat, Mixolydian. That's what I would call that. Or you could just call this whole thing B flat Dorian, or the whole thing E flat Mixolydian. I'd probably lean towards calling the whole thing B flat Dorian. But you know, really all he's doing, you know, if we look at the general pattern here, you know, we have a target note, and we just squiggle around it, and then we land, right? So this is just a really big squiggle. Like, he's targeting that E flat over the A flat major 7. And he's gonna say, oh, I'm gonna work within D flat minor 7 slash B flat Dorian. I'm just gonna go, right? That's the same land, land. And the thing is, if we know that we're playing eighth notes, and we know that we start here, and we know that we want to peak kind of around there, we just go scalar. That's really what he's doing. That's what he's thinking. Is like, oh, I'm gonna so that's a good thing to know. Here he arpeggiates F minor 7 or A flat 6. That's a good thing to know, is that like the harmony that bebop is evolving from treats like the tonic as a 6 chord. So like people, you know, people will write major 7, but like if you're ending the tune, you're gonna play a 6 or a 6-9. And that's, you know, because the 6 is more closely related to the pentatonic, right? Like if we're building fifths off of A flat, we're gonna get you know, that right there, that's a 6-9 chord. That might be a little too deep for right now, but just know that when you're on the 1 chord, you can expect to, or you're on just a major chord that you're treating as a destination. Here it makes a lot of sense for him to arpeggiate just a 6 chord basically. And then what's going on here? So the way that I have it written is as D flat, C flat, because I'm sorry, I'm a bad person, B flat, and A flat. Now this is gross, I recognize this, but there's some reason. Here he's going, yeah, let's leave that for later discussion, sorry. Here he's going G minor 7, C7, F minor 7, B flat 7, E flat major. That's a good thing to note also, that, you know, in real rhythm changes, you resolve to the 1 on the second ending and not the first. But that's not really what we're talking about right now. Here we see the same shape that we used right above. I mean, that's like, it's pretty blatant. So again, you know, chromatic approach tone into G minor 7, and then here he's not really playing C7. This is kind of a C minor 7. I mean, really all this is you could treat this whole bar as outlining a E flat major 9 chord, right? Like B flat, E flat, B flat, D flat, F, D. Those are the strong pitches, and then E flat and C. You know, this is a very ba 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 da 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 da. Wow, never mind. Yeah, so this bar is really E flat. That's the way that I hear it. And so when he's going into E flat, you know, when we're thinking of going into somewhere, we're usually going to imply a 5 chord. So if we're going to call this bar if we're going to call that E flat, then the way that we're going to point towards E flat is with the 5. So the 5 of E flat is B flat 7. So we're going to play something that sounds like B flat 7. Now, if this is a B flat 7 chord, you just got to think, you know, what B flat 7 chord has, you know, that looks like a flat 3, or you could call it a sharp 9, but that would be just ugly to notate. That's why I didn't write it like that. So that's a sharp 9, flat 9, 1, 7. That's about what I think is going on. Now, another way you could think about it is that this structure would come from a scale called the dominant diminished scale, or the half whole diminished scale. Flat 9, sharp 9, all that jazz. I'm sorry that I said that. So if we have basically a scale that goes half step, then whole step, then half step, then whole step, and then half, and then whole, half, whole. Then we have some pretty interesting things that go on. So the first is if we skip every other, that right there, B flat, D flat, E natural, G, B flat. Check your notes. What is that? That is a B flat diminished 7 chord, or a D flat diminished 7 chord, or an E, you know, that permutable. And then if we take all the other notes, so kind of the same every other process. What's that? Oh God. What is that? That's a C flat or a B. So B, D, F, A flat. That is B diminished 7. So remember, we were talking about, like, there's a lot of ways that you can treat a 7 chord. This is another way you can treat it, is with a related diminished sound. So this is like a whole tone, this is diminished sound. And so now you can see in this scale, he's really picking out, he's just walking down the scale. So we start here, so we go D flat, C flat, B flat, and if we extend it down, you know, that's a half step, so that has to be a whole step. That'd be an A flat. So that's just B flat, half whole diminished, or dominant diminished, as it's sometimes called. So that's what's going on there. Wow, this is going slowly. I hope that you guys are still watching. Thank you for checking it out. Where are we? Here, you know, that's just an F minor 7, and then this is part of the E flat major chord. Yeah, if you followed along for any of the other stuff, that should be, you should know that. I'm not going to linger too long and everything. Now we get to some real crazy shit. So we're in E flat. So this is a G7 something chord. I'm just gonna label all these. So B flat 7. Okay, so over the G7, he's playing C, E flat, A flat, C. So that's a pretty blatant. That's just an A flat major triad. But that is a weird thing to play over a G7. Here's what I think is going on. So remember how we can say that we can ignore the 2 for a 5? You can also supply a 2 for a 5. Bebop musicians will do this pretty frequently because, you know, there's only so long that you can play a single sound over a dominant chord. And if you play the 2, that gives you a nice suspension. You know, like if we think of G7 as this and D minor 7 as this, like those 2 notes go pretty nicely into these notes, and you don't really want a C on top of a B. You know, you might think of you don't like to play the 4 over a major 7 because that it just doesn't sound nice. That there's a rub between the 7 and the 3. So if you supply a 2 before a 5, it gives you access to this note. It won't sound too bad. And so that's really what he's implying here. So now the 2 of G7, that's D minor 7, right? So G7, or just C7 here. That shit too far apart. Okay, so D minor 7, G7, but he's playing A flat major over D minor 7. So I'm just gonna call that something else. I'm gonna call it A flat 7. Now, really all that's going on here is you're supplying another dominant chord, which is a half step above. So this is a tritone substitution for a D7. D7 would naturally go into G7, but because the guide tones of D7 and A flat 7 are the same, but inverted, right, we have, or we can have A flat and then G flat, which is the same as F sharp. You know, those are the same guide tones. So really we can work in either system. So it's okay to supply either of these as a secondary dominant to the chord that we're going into. So he's implying an A flat 7 here, goes up that arpeggio, and then this is a little structure that's pretty nice. Might wanna, I'm sorry that I'm very disorganized on this page. Otherwise this would probably be more useful, but hopefully you're just taking notes on your own. That's a nice little motion, isn't it? Ba-ba-doo-bap. Is that something we have here? Maybe I should move this up here, but I probably won't. This is another classic little, he's targeting that note, which is the 3rd of the chord that we're on. So that's a nice little target melody note. But then he's just wrapping around it chromatically. You know, that's 2 half steps below it and 1 half step above it. That's like, you know, it's just all tight together. So he's just going, so that's going on there. And then here, C minor 7, he plays basically a G minor 7 structure there, right? That's G, B flat, D, F, D again. So that's G minor 7, which is the 2 of C7. So you get to do that, it's allowed. And then he, like I was talking about, it gives you access to the 7 and the 5, which are really nice suspensions to move into the 3 of the chord that you're actually on. And then this is the 13 of C7 or the 3 of F7, which is really where we're going. So he's just preempting that resolution. Here we got F7. This is a weird one. He's playing, this is like a little G major structure. I would call that what that is. But really what that is the 9, sharp 11, 5, 13, 9 again. Sorry, I'm busy right now. Yeah? I'm busy right now. Okay. What's up? You're not busy, come find me. Okay. Sorry, Bill Bonson listeners. My fucking mom, it's her birthday. She won't shut up. Kidding. That was a joke. So a little G major structure, which just gives you some color notes. Could call that polytonality. I wouldn't. I'm not cringe. I actually would. And then that's just a, this is kind of a subservient note. He's just playing an F mixolydian, and then this is a little chromatic note that leads into this chromatic structure, which is, just chromatic. But it's nice because he starts on the 9 and he lands on the 7, so it kind of fits. Here he swallows all these notes, but I really hear it as the same structure as those. So it's just going into E flat. And then here he has just a nice little E flat major phrase. There's nothing else to say. He's just playing an E flat major. And then here he has D flat, C flat, and A, which remind me a little bit of this diminished structure that we were talking about, but also are just kind of a little chromatic thing at the end. So, oh man, you know what? That's probably from there's sort of a different substitution that you could have here. If the bass player were to go that's really what it is. So if those are the notes, and that kind of follows, right? He hits the A flat 7 on a strong beat, not the A flat 7, the A flat on a strong beat, which is the 4, and like we were talking about, we don't like 4 over a major chord, so it kind of sounds more like a superimposition. He's adding a color there, so that's kind of what I would call that. You could also call this, because A flat 6 and F minor 7 are the same, you could call this F minor 7, and then I think this is a F sharp diminished or an A diminished 7, and those are the same. Fight me. So yeah, or okay, that's actually controversial. Maybe it's just F sharp minor 7, kind of an inversion of that structure we had over here. Where did we have it? Somewhere, I remember. So that would be kind of a C sharp, B natural, A. I might actually rewrite that. I'm pretty confident in that interpretation. But all this really serves is to get us into G minor 7. But really he's treating G minor 7 as just the 3 of E flat major. And so he doesn't play, G Dorian. This is the issue with looking at chords and immediately thinking of a related scale, is that a G minor 7 can be the 6, it can be the 3, it can be the 2. That was close. They would have forced me to retake theory. And all of those require different treatments. So you really need to think about the key that you're in, and realize that really all that's going on in these bars is, you're moving into the 2 and you're still on the 1. And I remember I sent Joe some like secret runes that like seem to be just absolutely insane, but I promise do mean something. I would call this the same sound as this, and this is really just a structure that moves into the 2 and the 5. This is here to give you nightmares. Now he has C minor 7. So yeah, this is like just A flat add 9, kind of, or you could call it F minor 11. All of these are notes that you could borrow from some arpeggio. I mean, it's also, if you put this down an octave, that's 1, 2, 3, 5, which is a really common pattern. Ba 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 ba, of A flat, which is the related 1. So F minor 7 could also be treated as A flat 6. So that's 1, 2, 3, 5, and A flat. Yeah, just a little structure. Ba 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 do ba. And see, we're targeting that E flat note there. Yeah, I'll call that E flat 7. Who even cares? So that's just a little chromatic structure, but that's a really common thing. You're going from 3 to 1, and you have 4 notes to get there. So, you know, 3 and 1 are only that many half steps apart. So you gotta use all of them. But that's like a really common piece of bebop language. And you know, really all you gotta think of that is like we have note, ba ba da ba da, and we know that we have that many notes happening, and it's like you can just deduce all of that. Ba ba da ba da, ba ba da ba da bo, ba ba da ba bo. I messed up that, but that's a little figure, David Baker, bebop. Yeah, it's a thing people play. You'll run into that a bunch. This D might be confusing because you're like, hey, it's E flat 7, it's a flat 7, you need a flat 7. And it's like, well, this is a approach tone, basically, in the same way that we had approach tones here. You know, it just leads us into the D flat, and because we have the D flat on a stronger beat than the D, we don't even care. But again, you know, we kind of, Sonny Rollins found himself here, and he's like, okay, wait, I need to get to something that means A flat. So that could be A flat, could mean C, maybe E flat or F. And he chose C, and so he put himself up again. So he gave himself 2 spots, and he was able to play E flat mixolydian just down into that C. Train. Sorry, if that train whistle didn't come through, that might have just sounded like crazy. But here, that's just A flat 6, I would call that, you know. And then that's literally the same thing. These are basically the same bars, actually. He just doesn't have the E flat here. So and both times we're landing on a B flat. So anyways, that's kind of cool. G minor 7, C minor 7, we're almost done, oh my god. That's something you should know. That's cool blues. Took me a minute. I like had total brain fart. That would have been embarrassing if I had to like look that up or something. It's, yeah, that's, look up cool blues if you don't know that. But I mean, that's really just E flat. So he's like, okay, 3, 6, 2, 5. Yeah, that is E flat major. Don't care. So things that we learned today. One is that the primary thing that you care about is notes that you land on and the shape you make. You know, all that really matters in these structures is the little landing points. And you know, that they can be big, like this one, like we were talking about, or they can be small, like these little enclosures that I can no longer find. You know, those are different scales, but they're the same thing, really. And then another thing is that how we treat the 5 chord is a important point of interest. You know, we can treat it as a whole tone thing, we can treat it as a diminished thing. You know, this could also be considered sort of a diminished thing if you wanted, but that's arguable. Here's a pretty natural just E flat mixolydian treatment. There's different ways of doing that, that's important. Another thing is that you can add or remove 2 chords from 2 5s, or just standalone 5s, you can add the 2. And that changes how you can treat them. And yeah, that's it. That's jazz.